So we're a team from George Mason University. My name's Seth Parsons. I'm here with my colleagues Kristien Zenkov and Audra Parker. All three of us will be speaking today. We're representing our elementary and secondary education programs. So we're going to talk today about a video coding and teacher preparation, creating a comprehensive, developmental, and sustainable model. So the use of video in teacher preparation courses and experiences is not new. In fact, as we were preparing this, I was thinking back to my own teacher preparation in the 1990s, and even then I had to videotape myself teaching in a classroom. So it's certainly not a new idea, but the modes of capturing video have increased tremendously. So we all carry around little recorders in our pockets with smartphones. So the technology advances have enabled easier videotaping. And there's also been a proliferation of coding tools, so software that enables you to use video in innovative ways. So with increases in technology as well as in tools, colleges of education are increasing the use of video in teacher education coursework and preparation of new teachers. Looking at our context in particular, we have a few goals and challenges that we wanted to work towards with increasing the use of video in our teacher education programs. We wanted more structure and rigor in our field experiences. Those, like many field experiences in the past, were traditionally unstructured and with teachers that just volunteered and go get your hours done and we'll check that box. And it wasn't very structured or rigorous in how teachers were using those early field hours. Also, we wanted to create assignments that created a space for course to field connections. So breaking down that traditional barrier between universities on one hand and K-12 public schools on the other. So we wanted to use video to try to pull together those relationships and those connections. One challenge that we faced was changes in supervision funding. So that happened at the college level, College of Education, revised the way people were financially funded for doing supervision work. So we had some long-term folks who were working with our program doing field supervision, and all of a sudden their funding was reduced and changed. And it compelled us to think differently about appropriately funding those folks. And also CAPE Standard 2, as you all know, the CAPE standards came out and really increased the focus on field preparation and clinical practice in teacher ed. So all those areas of goals and challenges inform the work that we were doing. So we've adopted Idina program, and Idina is a secure online space for sharing videos. Idina is specifically geared towards teachers in K-12 schools, as well as teacher candidates and teacher preparation programs. So it was designed with teaching and instruction in mind, and it allows users to mark the video where they want to make their comments, and the feedback corresponds with specific moments and teaching acts. So we have this picture up here that sort of shows what the screen looks like on Idina. And this video was uploaded by Mallory, a teacher candidate, to a group called Westlawn Interns. So all the interns as well as the teacher candidate and mentor teachers could view this video. And then down here you can see where comments were made. So as you view the video, if you have a comment, whether it's a suggestion, strength, or note, or question, suggestion, strength, note, you can just press the plus in real time where you want to make the comment, and a box pops up and you can type the comment, and the result is a little line there that shows what the comment was, what type of comment it was, and where in the video it was made. So it allows multiple users. So that way when my interns tape videos of instruction and upload it and they comment, I can go directly to their questions and comments and see what they said and vice versa, and make my own comments as well. So At George Mason, the way we've been using this is to support field-based course assignments. So I teach literacy methods, for example, and I will have an assignment out in their field work, moving towards more structured work in their field experiences, and have them videotape that lesson that they're doing, and then that allows me as well as their classroom peers to be able to view what they did in the classroom. Also, micro-teaching is a traditional teacher preparation activity where peers view a common lesson that's taught by one of the teacher candidates. Idina really supports that. When I did micro-teaching back in the 1990s, we all just sat around the VCH recording of me teaching and stopped and commented on it, whereas this facilitates much easier. We can do it without being in the same space, and it allows us to have conversations online. The internship triad, so we're thinking, I'm also a university facilitator, so when we think about the university facilitator, mentor, teacher, and intern, this allows them all to have access to the same teaching episodes and also the same comments and reflections on that instruction. And we also use it in internship peer coaching, where fellow interns can comment on each other's instruction and ask questions and reflect on what took place in the classroom. So I'm going to turn it over to Audra, who is going to talk about our framework for creating sustainable model of video use.
Great, so thank you. So as we've worked through our adoption of Idina at George Mason, we found that this framework naturally emerged when we think about how we've gotten to where we are today. And it really fell into these three areas. We were purposeful and intentional with our adoption of the tool, and then with our use of the tool, and now in our analysis of how it's going once we've gone through those first two phases together. So in terms of purposeful adoption, we took a number of important steps in order to ensure that Idina was appropriately integrated into our elementary ed and secondary ed programs. First, we thought about fit and feasibility. So before we even got to the phase of how do we go about adopting this, we had to make sure, is it the right program for us and for our students in our schools? We also had to get faculty buy-in and administrative support, so we really needed to make sure that it wasn't just me that wanted to adopt the tool, or Seth or Kristien, but we had a general support for that tool, and that will come out later in the usage piece, so you'll see the connection between those two. We also started small. We began with a pilot of the program with a couple of students and a couple of faculty, so that we as faculty could get our head around the tool itself and how we might use it across the program. And so we could see how students would adopt this tool and what things they might run into in terms of challenges as well. Then we had to prepare the students for the pending adoption. So I think Kristien had developed quite a really nice handbook. We explored the Idina tools that they have available. We prepped our students for the financial costs that were going to be coming their way. So we tried to give them a lot of notice about what was about to happen. And then we had to prepare the faculty, get ourselves up to speed on how to use the tool, and our schools. And surprisingly, I think one of our biggest concerns was that we might have some trouble with implementation in our K-12 school partners. And actually that has been not a problem at all. So it was really a surprise to us on the faculty side that what we thought might be a barrier actually wasn't a barrier at all. And for us, we started encountering that question on our end and then discovering that it wasn't going to be a challenge in that pilot phase. So that pilot was really important for preparing and planning for potential problems that we might run into. Fortunately, this one didn't turn out to be a problem at all. So we also thought about purposeful use. So we went through this adoption cycle, and then we started thinking about, well, how can we be intentional about our use of this tool? And so we did a number of things. One is we started with a low stakes assignment that helps the students learn how to use the tool. I'll be very honest, it's the easiest tool. I have not in 2-3 years, I don't know how long we've used the tool at this point, fielded questions about how to use it, how to load a video. Those are not the kinds of questions that come. It's a really simple platform to use. But we build in this assignment so that we can see if anything will emerge for the students. in reality, what it's become is that it helps our students get used to hearing their voice on the camera. So what kind of tool will they use to record, and how do I sound on it? Oh, I don't like my voice. All of that comes out in this tool, and it's very low stakes. They go into their field placement classroom with no students, and they do a literal commentary, non-evaluative, about what they see in the room, and then we tie it back to some of the principles of classroom design. So the reflective piece and the analysis occurs in the text when they're coding the video, but the actual video itself is non-evaluative. We also thought about purposeful use in terms of making sure that our students saw that as faculty we valued the use of video in our program in a systematic way. So we really tried to be thoughtful about how we were incorporating video across the program from their first and second semesters all the way through their year-long internship. What we've been seeing over time is that's really helped once they get to internship to know that this is just what we do in this program. So some of these initial experiences, there are two literacy pieces. I'll turn it back over to Seth in just a moment. I'm going to skip down into the math, social studies, and general methods. In each of those, it really helped us to shift the nature of the task we'd been asking students to do. So in the past, we would have students plan a lesson. That would be like phase one. That's great, right? And then kind of the next thing that might happen is some folks might say, go teach that lesson. You still don't know much about how it went or what happened. What we're seeing now is that we have them plan the lesson, they teach the lesson, they analyze the lesson with us and with their peers. And so we see much more of a continuous improvement cycle of plan, teach, reflect, plan again. And that's it's seen in a lot of our methods courses now. So in math and in social studies and in general methods. Seth mentioned a couple of the literacy pieces if you want to.
In literacy methods, I've always had a strategic read-aloud assignment. Those of you in elementary know that elementary literacy know that a strategic read-aloud is an excellent way to support comprehension growth and to show students the processes of how to comprehend. But it's sort of it's an unnatural way to read a book. To stop your reading and think out loud for kids in a kid-friendly way it requires a learning curve. So I've always had that as an assignment. And previously, I would have them do a strategic read-aloud in class with their peers acting like elementary students. And it was a good assignment, and they learned a lot about the process. But when we adopted Idina, I had them do it in the more authentic context of in a classroom with kids. And it really enhanced the quality of that assignment because, first they're with real kids, and it's much more authentic. But it also allowed for real conversations about how the kids responded to the read aloud and captured the nuance of that was lost in a sort of generic university classroom setting.
I would say that Idina has also helped us shift how we participate and experience the internship supervision cycle. So as you might imagine, the older model was that we would go and observe a lesson and then we would reflect immediately after the lesson with the intern. And now we've really shifted so that we're present for the teaching of the lesson, they're video recording that lesson, and instead of doing that debrief after, we do a quick dump, right? They get all of the things out of their mind that they just didn't like about the lesson, that so-and-so did this and it caused this problem, the stuff that's kind of surface level. And then once that 10, 15-minute conversation is finished, we ask them to go back and reflect on the video that they've taken. So maybe a day, 2 days later, they dig back in and they actually reflect on the lesson and they move past those kind of surface level observations and really start to analyze what they noticed in the lesson. The power of the video is they often notice things that students were doing, which they didn't catch when they're in the moment of teaching as novice teachers. They're about their lesson and themselves. When they watch the video, they see behaviors of children that can be really powerful learning experiences for them. So that just shifted how we thought about our role as supervisors because of the nature of the platform. It's also allowed us to engage teachers and administrators. So now we have small groups set up within Idina, so the mentor teacher, myself, and the interns, or a group of interns and myself and a group of teachers. I even have administrators that ask to hop on so they can coach the interns throughout their internship experience. So all of those different stakeholders are able to have a role in coaching our students across their year-long internship. And then the last piece is just the nature of kind of the reflection and the goal setting. So because we're able to capture these moments of video, we ask them to focus more intentionally across their experience on what they're working on. So we might have a group that's working on their teacher language. So we'll ask them to capture these 2 and 3 minute video clips, and then we're coding specifically for that skill. And we'll use our group settings, our groups of mentor teachers or our groups of students to help them focus on that particular topic. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristien.
So we were talking beforehand, and we are still baffled why you all are here, that it's, again, the weather, the time, but we're glad you're here. So I would add one thing to the purposeful adoption, which I hadn't realized until I was just listening to Audra. So I direct our secondary education program. Audra and Seth work with the elementary ed program. We had the benefit of the elementary ed program piloting everything for us. We got to watch everything that happened with them, and then just to piggyback and borrow everything that they were doing. For us, for the secondary ed program, we've kind of started at the second bullet point there, that using this in what was arguably the third stage of our program, so a 4-semester sequence. We started using the Idina just to have folks videotape one lesson. It started in their in their university classrooms, which as Seth mentioned, good assignment but limited in its benefit. What we did next, and sort of simultaneously, and it's probably the part that I'm most excited about in terms of just Idina use, was the last part with student teaching. So Audra mentioned that the elementary ed program actually has interns videotape a lesson, videotape every formal observation that a supervisor is conducting. For us, we don't have them videotape the actual lesson that I'm observing as a supervisor. We actually have them videotape the follow-up, what I've taken to calling an interim observation. So I'd conduct an observation, would have do a follow-up, triad. What are the things that you really thought you did well? Things that you're still working on. Let's identify one of those things that you're still working on, and in between that observation and the following, we want you to videotape yourself working on that, attempting to demonstrate growth with that, what you considered a weakness. I'd like to think that's a beautiful model. I'd like to think it's working magically and really facilitating the interns' growth across the semester. I can't say that it's absolutely doing that, but it definitely seems like just a good structure to follow. What we did next was backed up, and we moved to just our first methods experience. So again, across a 4-semester sequence, we've now finally moved into what really is the first semester, and we have folks using Idina just with micro-teaching in their class. So a limited assignment, but when it's early in the program, it seemed to be pretty reasonable. And that for us was just about learning curve of using Idina, getting these folks to use the tool earlier so that as Audra mentioned, they're just getting used to videotaping themselves, hearing their voices, watching themselves on video. So for us, I think we just wanted to step back and just talk a little bit about what sense are we making about our use of Idina to this point, and I think we are in year 3. So we've had time to think about this and just step back from it a bit. What we've realized, and this is probably, folks have Audra's heard me say this many times, what we've realized is that Idina is arguably the only, maybe, certainly the best technology-based tool for us that has pushed our programs and our students or interns' growth in an absolute way. It does not feel like an add-on at all. It might at times to our students, but in reality, it's one of those things that we can see this tool, this platform, pushing them to consider their growth in ways that they simply didn't before. And that, as a teacher educator, that just feels like a phenomenal thing. Yeah, question?
I just want to ask a question. So what was your main purpose for choosing Idina? Was it you needed a place to put the videos, or you liked that they could timestamp them and comment? Like, what was your main reason?
It's a great question.
I don't know how much it costs, but I think it's fairly expensive.
Yeah,
right?
and
Okay.
yeah. No, it's a great question. For us, we were introduced to the platform. I think Audra introduced us to the platform, and it was just incredibly easy to use. So the user friendliness of that platform was it was an easy sell for us. What we also did do, because the cost is definitely a consideration, at least with the secondary program, we were really systematic in cutting, considering what resources we were requiring students to purchase and cutting back on those. Because it was, like with an internship, we didn't have a textbook, but it was an easy case to make that, hey, across 9 credits or 8 credits to purchase essentially a $100 tool.
Also using like live text for classroom is an additional cost.
Right, we don't use it. No, this is our only tool. Do you want to say anything about why Idina?
Tool. I mean, that at the time when we adopted that, for us, it met our needs for using video and having students code video, which we thought was really important. But it was also just a simple tool, and we invite teachers and principals to use it as well. And we needed something that all of our stakeholders could use with some relative ease. The other piece I was thinking about is that our students at Mason do not have to buy. We're not in a TBA state. We actually don't have to buy all that.
Right.
So I think the textbook comment is really key. We thought across our program, for our students, they buy upon entry into the program, and then we say, this is your textbook across the program for your field experiences, which I think is one strategy that we used, but we also don't have those other B's.
Yeah.
And I think Adam can talk to cost as a private company.
Yeah.
How much you asked. So it sounds like it really meant your agency. Did you look at other platforms before you did?
I've used Studio Code in another context, and so the simplicity here was really important to me. I think we had some experience with that as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. So just a few other analyses or reflections just about our use of it. We have had to focus and been able to focus really just on the quality of the Idina videos. You can imagine we've had varying reactions to this. A lot of anxiety about the use of Idina and video, and then a lot of excitement about it. So we've really had to temper some folks, mostly teacher candidates' use of the tool, and we've had to really scaffold and really support a lot of folks' just consideration of the tool. So far, so good. I mean, it's been something that we slowly integrated across a year, pilot, et cetera, but so far, so good. I think it's something that has become just a core part of our program. What it has also done is very explicitly allowed us to promote field-based teaching opportunities, because our folks now, I mean, they have this additional tool, and now they feel they're motivated. We motivate them to use this tool in the schools and to bring the video back into the university classroom. So really developing that school-university bridge, that theory-practice divide. Maybe the most exciting part of it, just from a teacher education standpoint, is that because our candidates videotape themselves and do the initial reflection on their own, their ownership of professional development, their ownership of their growth just looks entirely different. It's dramatically enhanced and looks entirely different than what it used to be. Previously, their growth was really driven by us, by their mentors and by their supervisors. Now, because of this tool, this platform, it's very much more driven by them. I did mention the interim supervision, the interim observations. That's just changed our supervision model. And again, Audra and Seth mentioned it, that we had to consider how can we be better teacher educators with less money going into our supervision model. I mean, it was a dramatic shift. But with this sort of a tool, I would say as a supervisor, I actually feel better about the supervision work now than I probably ever have in my career, and doing this a long time. Lastly, just some recommendations about using video and this particular platform. So we did, again, I think Audra mentioned it, our process of adopting this platform and adopting video really was something that took time. And I think that's, when you're using a new tool, maybe that's an obvious thing, but when you're using something like video, it seems especially important. We were very careful about considering what to capture, how to reflect, and just thinking about it as a professional development tool. And lastly, just some concerns that you can imagine, Audra kind of hinted at it, our school partners sometimes could be anxious about the use of video. In almost every instance, it's not an issue. It just falls away as a concern once you start to use the tool. The teacher candidates can be concerned just about how to use this new tool, but the ease of this particular tool of Idina is, again, it's one of the most foolproof tools I've encountered. And lastly, and just to echo, and I guess maybe it's the primary point for us, I think we feel better able to make those school-university connections, theory-practice connections with this sort of a tool than perhaps any other that we have. So I think that's it. Questions, comments, discussion, please.
Our districts all allow us to use the media opt-out form that they have. Actually, one of our biggest districts, partner, allows us to use that. The other districts, they have the students send in an additional form, and it's the one that the teachers and schools use for their national board. So it's a form they already have in place, so we didn't provide an additional layer. And that was one of those concerns that I think, as faculty, we were all really concerned it's going to be an issue, and it turns out that our district partners like, that's fine. There's our way around that. And I wonder if part of that is just the use of video and media now is just so different than it was 5 years ago, 3 years ago. That's not a big issue.
I think if we're looking more like a software for accreditation to document standards and upload spot reports to student assessments, I think that we would need a different platform. Correct me if I'm wrong, like a live text or a task meeting, but I think this is more for, like you said, professional development, case standard 2, video to record field experiences and internship observation, things like that, which is very essential to moving your teacher education programs forward, advancing, etc. But I was just distinguishing that we probably still would need a different platform to work with our accreditation papers, right?
Well, there are frameworks associated with the platforms. I'm not as familiar with the NTPA piece. I believe that's in there. Because I know that's in there, but we're not an NTPA state, so that part doesn't resonate quite as much with me. But there are frameworks. As you're coding, you can tie a comment to a particular standard or framework or making NTPA. I don't know anything about NTPA other than we don't have. And it makes me do a little cheer every time. That part is there, and I think there's a way to pull the data from that, but
I think at Idina we're contacting. I used to work for Nova Southeastern University, and I was talking with the rep from Idina about possible collaboration. So it looks like you've been using it for a long time. But the company isn't housed in George Mason. Right?
No. That's one of the caveats. We're huge fans, but we don't work for them.
Fair enough. They couldn't pay you more.
Yeah, please.
Cloud-based, or you guys housing your own server? What are the tech specs for it?
It's cloud-based.
Yeah.
I think, I'm going to say something wrong. I think they have access to the videos for however long. I think when they purchase access to the license, that's their ability to upload videos, but it doesn't drive how long they can access those videos. So.
Yeah, I think probably the easiest thing for us is, and I think we've said it, is that from a technology standpoint, even the most tech-phobic individual has barely batted an eye. So, yes.
There is an app that a lot of my students will use that we'll let them upload like 20 minutes of video directly to the platform. So instead of having to drag and drop, which everything talks to itself, and again, this should be like, I'm not a technology person, I'm making that very apparent in my way of describing this, but it's just, the app basically lets it upload directly, so I think that saves the storage from the student's laptop as well.
And does that mean, do you guys check out cameras? Is it strictly all on the student? They need to find whatever.
Yeah. We will stick around if you have other questions, but thank you.